But welcome. We're really excited to be here. Jesse and I, we ran a workshop a few months ago and we did something similar to this, but it was in 2 days. We did it crazy, like we weren't really thinking, and we did a 6 hour, 3 hours a day weekend where we went over this information. And when it ended, everyone said, wait, like, see you tomorrow. And so
Yeah,
we
like,
really
can we do
felt
this
like,
next week? Because it really felt like it was like
yeah,
we had this community going and everyone kind of wanted to keep going. So
it
it
was so
felt a little
sad.
weird. Yeah, it was super sad. It was like, well, I guess that's it. Bye. And
Yeah,
so
it was tough.
yeah, this time we
So
wanted to
we,
do it more like a community of like, let's actually do that and break it out. So we meet like every week and then we can kind of get to know each other more. And we're going to have the chat through Maven of sort of like staying in contact throughout the week and make it more. So we're working on this together because like one of the things when you have ADHD is like, so many of us grew up feeling isolated because like our brain kind of worked a little different than other people and maybe we didn't know why. But because of that, I think there's this like isolation that a lot of people with ADHD have experienced. And then when you get to hang out with other people and have community with other people that have that similar sort of brain, it really feels amazing. It really feels awesome to sort of know and be able to like strategize with people that get the way you think, because I, for most of my life, have like chased down productivity strategies and then they don't work for me. And that's super frustrating because it seemed to work for all these people around me. And I didn't know why it didn't work for me. And we're going to be discussing that. I think mostly next week, we'll really dive into kind of that motivation stuff. But yeah, that's a reason. That's one of the reasons we're doing this format the way we are. And we're super excited, but it's also a little bit of an experiment doing this kind of 6-week version. And we're super excited you are all here with us to do it. Yeah, let me go ahead and
yeah,
pull up the slide. Go ahead, Trina.
yeah, I'm excited that we get longer time with you. Basically, that was the feedback the last time we did this, was that we needed more time with one another. That was the best thing about this whole thing, was getting together, and the validation and relating to everyone is just amazing. So welcome to the Refocus Your ADHD cohort course. My name is Trina Haynes, and this is Jesse
I am
J.
Jesse. There we
Anderson.
go. Yep.
There's us. Love that picture. So first of all, we kind of wanted to show you this slide and see if you guys can put in the chat what you think all of these things have in common. So just take a look at these here, see if you see any common threads, and put your guesses in the chat as to what these things might have in common.
Oh, and the chat is blowing up like usual. All right, let's try and catch up here. So yes, roles, professions, but something more than that. So these are all jobs, but what, in addition to that, what is making these, what's tying kind of all of these together?
Well, good choices for ADHD peeps.
Jobs with lots of flexibility. Any more guesses in here? Human element required.
Ah,
Jobs,
here we go.
jobs we've considered at some point. All right, let's go ahead and we'll do a hint. So here is a hint. Any other guesses with this hint of the color change there? It's a very minor hint, but anyone? Lots of change all the time. Multitasking. All right. It's us. Those are the jobs that literally Trina and I have. Yes, someone just said it. Our job history. So yeah, all these jobs on the top, these are jobs I've had in my life, which is more than 30 jobs. And yeah, Trina's on the bottom. So it's lots and lots of jobs. And I'm sure some of you can relate with just like, this is really fun. This job's really fun. And then you get there and 3 months later, you're like, I'm bored, or my boss said something. And so I said, screw you, I'm out of here, or whatever the case may be. I think it's really common with people with ADHD. We just have lots of jobs. Oh yeah.
So Trina's making pizza.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We were going to ask, like, why don't you list in the chat, like, how many jobs you think you've had, if you guesstimate, or
the weirdest one.
Yeah. Or the weirdest job that you've had. I'm not sure what the weirdest one I've had. I've had a lot. Camp counselor, that was pretty unique. 10 jobs.
You want us to go back to our teen years, or just like?
Either
So
one, either one.
how I did this was job titles, because sometimes I work for the same company, but I changed roles many, many times. So I kind of counted those as in each job because I was doing a different job. But I would estimate how many job titles maybe you've had, or just put the weirdest job. Like I'm kind of more interested in the weird ones.
Katie put in salmon slinging in Alaska. That's pretty good. I have not done that one. That sounds fun. I mean, that's the kind of job that sounds fun until like day one, and then you're like, never mind, I'm out of here.
Obviously not still doing that job, so there must be a reason.
Right.
Oh man. Yeah.
Peace Corps, nice. Jake's got Paperboy, Burger King, Technical Sport. Oh, only 4. Okay. 15. Oh, more salmon. We've got a theme with the salmon.
What? There's 2 people in this thing that have done that? Are you serious?
That's awesome.
Wow.
It's a little different. Salmon fishing versus salmon. So they could work
Oh,
together.
okay.
Yeah. Cool. Horror themed soap on the side. What? I love people with ADHD. You get so many random creative, like who would have even thought of that? That's amazing. All right, cool. We talked about like community being really important for this. And one of the ways we want to do that is doing like these breakout. Oh, let me skip to that here. Doing breakout sessions. So there's about a little over 20 of us in the group, and we're going to do these so that we can break into small groups of kind of like 3 or 4 people, where it'll put you in sort of like a private chat or a private video call with those people. And what we're going to do is just sort of share our goals in that group. So I've got instructions here, talk about your quick intro, just sort of introduce who you are, where you're based, your occupation, what age you discovered ADHD, and then share why you're here. Like, why'd you sign up for this cohort course? And what are your goals? What are you hoping to get out of it? And so I'm going to let me stop the share here. I'm going to send everyone into breakout rooms, and you're going to get, I think it gives you like a little message that'll pop up. So you accept it, and it'll pop you into a room with a random person in the group. And then I encourage you to turn on your camera for that call. And then we'll probably do about 10 minutes of that. And we'll try to, we'll try to give you a little like minute warning so that you know when your time is kind of running out. And we will also, once everyone's in their groups, I'll share that slide again, because I'm sure we've all forgotten what was on that slide. So let me go ahead and do the breakout rooms. Automatically sign.
Yeah, and I just want to add that one of the reasons we're doing breakout sessions is because when we did them a few months ago, this was one of the things that everybody really loved. And sometimes we would bring them back and they'd say, no, we want to go back into the breakout session. And this is like something that ADHDers really enjoyed. So we hope you guys get a lot out of these breakout sessions, and you think you will.
And if you're like me, it'll probably be awkward for the first moment, but you'll soon just like Trina said, like, I think the first one's a little bit weird. And then you just like, this is amazing getting to connect with other people that get it the way that so many other people maybe don't. All right, I'm going to kick off the breakout rooms, and then we'll do about 10 minutes and then everyone will come back. So I will share the slide once everyone's in the rooms. Where are we at on time? We're about halfway through. Perfect. Oh, one thing we wanted to mention that we haven't yet. Hey, we have ADHD, which means we are kind of time blind. And so there will definitely be a bit of flexibility kind of with the schedule here. Like we've, run through, we have a general idea for like content, but we also want to allow room for like, going with the flow, and sort of like sometimes we'll ramble a little bit in a direction, or someone will ask a question and that'll take us another direction. And so there will definitely be a bit of flexibility with the stuff we're going to be covering and talking about in here because of that. And also I wanted to mention that a couple of people that showed up right as we were kind of doing the breakout sessions, and they both said like, sorry, I'm late. Don't feel like you need to apologize for stuff like that. We totally get it. I've literally been late to everything my entire life. When we mentioned that we did the version of this course like a few months ago, I was basically late to that because I was buying a plant. The plant actually behind me, I was at the store buying the plant, and almost didn't make it back in time to start that course. So we get it. It's totally, you don't feel like you need to apologize. You are among friends that understand here. Cool. All right,
Yeah,
I'm
Jesse
going to go ahead and move
decided,
on.
he decided 10 minutes before our class that he needed a plant in the background, so he left and he was pretty much late to our because of that. So
Yeah.
yeah, no apologies for being late. Time is kind of wishy-washy, but just bear with us, and I know you guys all understand.
Cool. So
But
we
yes,
are
we're gonna
going
get to
to,
the content now.
yeah, let's go. So I know like some of this may be familiar to some of you, but we're kind of going to do like a little bit of ADHD 101 so that everyone's kind of on the same playing field. Everyone kind of has the same general understanding. And one of the things with ADHD is like it has a really long history of negative stigma and myths, things that people think about ADHD that aren't necessarily true. But so it kind of has this PR problem where most people have heard of ADHD, but they have a different understanding of it. And why don't you, I'd love to hear from a few people, what are some myths that you've heard about ADHD? And just say them out loud. What are some myths that you've heard?
You're just lazy.
Just lazy.
You're not a
What
hyperactive
else?
young boy.
Yeah. Like you don't have ADHD, you're so organized and you figured out a system, but they don't realize all the scaffolding that has had to happen to make that happen.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's a big one. What
You're
else?
anything other than highly intelligent.
Yeah, when you have a degree and people are like, you can't have ADHD, you have a master's degree, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and look at a few. So common, there we go. Common ADHD myths. One of them, just the vanilla ADHD isn't real. That's a big one. That obviously that's a myth. ADHD is very real. It's actually been studied for like hundreds of years. Like the name has changed over time, but there's like several or a couple hundred years ago, I believe, it's like some of like the early signs of people documenting it. And especially there's been a ton of research in the last like 30 years or so, but there's so many studies about ADHD. It's definitely real. Another big one is ADHD is caused by bad parenting. That's one I used to think when I was growing up. I, had no idea that I had ADHD, and I just thought that ADHD was like, troubled kids that got in trouble a lot, and probably because their parents let them watch too much TV. Like that's what I thought growing up, not knowing that that's not at all what's going on. Another one somebody mentioned, like only boys can have ADHD or only kids can have ADHD. Obviously, like the boys thing is really difficult. And I've heard from, so many, maybe you can talk to it more, Trina, but I've heard from so many women that like trying to seek that diagnosis, and like doctor just sort of like offhand is just like, no, you're, women don't really have this. This is mostly males that have this condition.
Yeah, this is something that we're still facing a lot as women. When you go to get a diagnosis, this is very common.
Yeah, and I know I've heard a lot of women often get diagnosed with depression or anxiety instead, and it's like they won't even consider ADHD, so they go to sort of other conditions. Another one, adults outgrow their ADHD. Surprise, ADHD doesn't just go away on your 18th birthday. It stays with you. It's basically your brain is different, and it will always be different. Someone sort of mentioned this, but like we do kind of learn coping strategies a lot so that the symptoms aren't as overt, but it still is there. People with ADHD just need to try harder. Someone else said this one, that people with ADHD are lazy, which those ones just like kill me, because like I know how hard we are trying. Like when you have ADHD, you're trying so hard just to like get to that level that everyone else just sort of like expects you would be at. And so it's like this double insult of like, not only do you feel like you're not reaching that, whatever that line is, but people are also saying you're lazy when you're trying so hard. A few more myths. The ADHD can be cured by medication or yoga or any kind of thing like that. There's no cure for ADHD. And like, I don't even know for me, this is for me, like ADHD is so much of who I am that I don't even know if I would want, like, I don't even know who I would necessarily be without ADHD because it's become so much part of my identity and personality. Another one being kind of similar with those other ones, ADHD caused by a lack of discipline. People with ADHD can't focus on anything. The squirrel meme. This is actually another one that I used to believe before I was diagnosed. And it was the reason I thought like that I couldn't have ADHD, because I knew that there was certain things I had no problem focusing on. When my wife had first heard some of the symptoms of ADHD and thought like, oh, Jesse might have this, and she told me about it, I literally told her, I was like, I can't have ADHD because I have no problem focusing on the things that are interesting to me, which is hilarious because that's like key ADHD thing. Is like, yeah, that's hyper focus. When things are interesting, it's really easy to focus on them. Otherwise, it's a lot more difficult. A couple more. People with ADHD are always hyperactive. Again, like some people are, but some aren't. And we're going to go a little bit more into that in a second here. And that other one that was also mentioned, successful people can't have ADHD. I just looked at the clock. So we're gonna rush through this a little bit. Time flies. So ADHD, one of the biggest problems with ADHD is the name ADHD. It's a terrible name for a few different reasons. But the ADHD, if you don't know, stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. And there's a couple reasons it's terrible. One, you start with that attention deficit, and that is not really accurate. When you have ADHD, like you don't have a deficit of attention, you have a surplus. Like the problem isn't that we're not paying attention. The problem is we're paying attention to like everything. So we're in a coffee shop trying to have a conversation with somebody, and we're seeing all the other stuff in the coffee shop. And that ends up leading to distraction when something else eventually is more interesting than the conversation we're in. So like this attention deficit is just sort of like not an accurate name. It's more like attention dysregulation, because we're kind of taking in all that data, our brain doesn't regulate it very well. And so it's almost like we're not prioritizing what we, quote unquote, should be paying attention to because we're kind of just taking in all the data at once. And then the second part, again, the hyperactivity, it's really unfortunate that they've standardized that as being part of the name, because so many people don't have that outward, what's kind of traditionally known as hyperactivity. Especially women are less likely to have kind of those outward hyperactivity or hyperactive, symptoms. And so it's really unfortunate that it's in the name, because people see that and then think like, well, I can't have that because I'm not hyperactive. So it's really just like not a great name. And particularly mentioning like the hyperactivity, because not everybody has that, they've sort of divided ADHD into what they call presentations. And the reason they call them presentations instead of types is that you can change your presentation over time. So the three presentations of ADHD are predominantly inattentive presentation, predominantly hyperactive impulsive presentation, and then the combined presentation. And so the reason they're called the presentations, like I said, they can change over time. So it's sometimes common that a child might be more likely to have the predominantly hyperactive impulsive presentation, which is just sort of identifying which of those symptoms show up in childhood. And then when they get older, they may shift to more of an inattentive presentation or a combined presentation. And if you don't know what these terms are, like we're going to go through, these are the symptoms for those different presentations as defined in the DSM-5, which is, I have it right there. Cool. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, which is why we call it the DSM-5, because that's a pain to remember. But it's basically the guide that the United States, Australia, and some other countries use for kind of identifying mental disorders and defining sort of symptoms. So this is sort of what doctors will use to help diagnose people. But the symptoms so each one of these lists, or the first two list 9 symptoms. So one of them here is fails to pay close attention to details or makes careless mistakes. The second one is has trouble holding attention. The third is does not seem to listen when spoken to directly. The fourth is has trouble following through on instructions. That's a big one for me. The next has trouble organizing tasks or activities. Avoids, dislikes, or is reluctant to do tasks requiring sustained mental effort. Loses things necessary for tasks and activities. This is one, my daughter has ADHD, and this is one, it's like a magic trick. We'll be like, she'll have all the stuff, and then the second we need to do the homework, it's like the pencil's gone, the paper's gone, the book is gone too, and you're like, how you didn't even move from the seat, and they all just like magically disappeared. And then I think this is the last one here, just easily distracted. And then, oh, one more. So easily distracted and then forgetful in daily activities. So if you're anything like me, you're looking at it and you're like, wow, well, it just looks like somebody looked at my life and wrote down, like described all the difficulties I experienced. So that's the predominantly inattentive presentation. The second one is the predominantly hyperactive impulsive presentation. And these symptoms look like, let's see, fidgets or taps hands or feet or squirms in their seat, has trouble remaining seated. My son, he also has ADHD, and he, during dinner time, never stays in his seat. Like he's not like super crazy hyperactive, I would say. But the seating thing is really big. We'll be sitting at dinner, and for some reason, he's just like standing while eating anything. He's just like immediately out of his seat. And I have a friend that's like that with meetings. She like can't just, she'll be in a meeting and she's like, I have to get up. I can't stay seated. The third one is runs about or climbs on things when they're a child. And then as an adult, you're usually not climbing on things. So it shows up more. It's just like, restlessness. Another one is unable to take part in leisure activities quietly. Constantly acts or feels on the go or as if driven by a motor. The sixth one here, talks excessively, and then blurts out an answer before the question is completed. Trina and I were actually just talking about this before the call, talking about when you're having a conversation with somebody and they're a slower talker than you're wanting them to be. And a lot of times the blurting out, like, I guess it's a little bit more like interrupting, but it's like, get to the thing. And they're just like not talking fast enough for your brain. And I think part of it is like, that you're going to lose the attention. Your attention is going to go somewhere else. And so you're like trying to like get to the end of the sentence that they're not saying fast enough for you. Yeah. And then I think it's just the last one here. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was saying that was relatable. I was like, oh, yeah, I feel that.
Right.
All of these I feel, obviously.
Yeah. So has trouble waiting their turn. And then the last one, that's the one. So interrupts or intrudes on others. And so those are the 9 for predominantly hyperactive impulsive presentation. And then, as you might guess, the combined presentation is like symptoms from both of them. So out of these, so we got all these symptoms here. I'm curious. Oh, this is the thing. I always glance up like, oh, the chat. Oh, there's 22 messages. Everyone's having, I love the chat whenever I'm doing these sort of things. But seeing all these symptoms, how many of these do you relate to? I'm really curious. What is your number out of 18? Go ahead and put that in the chat. $25. Nice. Yep.
That was me.
Yeah, I see that. 18, at least half.
Yeah.
So I'll just say for me, there's 18 here. I'm pretty sure 14. I think about 14 of them apply to me. And it's a little bit stronger on the inattentive side for me. And then about half, it's basically everything on inattentive for me, and about half for hyperactive impulsive. Trina, how about you? What's a lot of 13s, 12s?
I've always thought I was like true combined, because all of these, there are not any of these that don't like
right
me at my core. I struggle with every single one of these. So I feel like I'm definitely like a true combined presentation.
Right. So
It's a
yeah,
fun cocktail.
right. And just for the context, now that you've had an idea of how many of these apply to you, the DSM-5 says that just having 5 or more of these symptoms is usually like criteria for diagnosis. Yeah, somebody, I see the emoji there. Exactly. Like it's when seeing 5 and I'm like, well, that's ridiculous because I'm way off the chart for that. So again, I think I said this earlier, but this isn't actually, it's not meant for self-diagnosis, but it really gives you kind of a good idea. And there is something called the ADHD self-report scale, which is similar to this. It's like a form that you can fill out, and it's kind of a good document if you are looking to try and get diagnosed, to fill it out and bring to your provider or whatever.
I
So
just
yeah.
want to add that for me, this is, I think, very validating, especially for women. A lot of us don't feel like maybe we don't have ADHD because we've had some pushback when we go to get diagnosed. And when you
Mhm.
look at this list and you relate to almost all of them, and you realize you only really need 5, that's very validating, right? To see this list and be like, okay, yeah, I do genuinely have ADHD. And I think that's really important for a lot of people in this whole process, is just that validation. So that's one reason we wanted to share it. I know it's like a lot and it's kind of wordy, but it does, I think for me, provide some validation. Like, okay, I very much have ADHD. So I just want
Yeah.
to throw that in there.
Yeah, that was definitely, I mean, I first saw this list, I think it's in the book Driven to Distraction, which was the first book that I was sort of recommended to look into. It's an older book, but it's still one of my favorites. And I remember reading this list and it was just like, what? This is like my whole life. Like someone wrote down all these things. And just like you said, Trina, like it's so validating to know, like, I just felt like I was broken. Like, why do I have all these problems? And like, there was nothing that explained it. Like all the, teachers that would talk about me not reaching my potential or getting in my own way or all those sorts of things. And then I just felt like I'm broken and there's no solution other than I'm bad somehow and I don't know how to fix it. And so for me, seeing these, I see Trina, for me, seeing these symptoms was extremely validating of just like knowing like, it's almost like you had that feeling like there's got to be something that's going on here, and seeing it finally made that click for me. Yeah, so that's all of the presentation sort of thing. I think people were already sort of sharing which one of the presentations they thought they were. It looks like a lot of the people are combined because we're seeing that like 12, 13, 14. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting distracted by the chat because everyone's having a fun time in there.
No,
and I'm
it's
like, I want to
okay,
be
yeah.
part of that. Yeah.
And you guys can feel free to turn your mics on if you want to, like, talk here. I think we are kind of nearing the end. And luckily we did it like right on time. And we do want to talk about the fact that like, we're not just gonna throw symptoms and throw struggles at you during this 6 weeks. Like this is heavy. This first little bit was kind of heavy, but a lot of this that we're gonna go over is not so heavy. So just, we've tried to get it out quickly in the beginning so that you don't have to like,
yeah, and
yeah.
speaking of that, so we kind of, like we said before, the time will be flexible, but this is sort of our general what the schedule is going to look like. And kind of what Trina said, because of like some of it is heavier, we've sort of arranged it like we were just rearranging last week. For me, I think finding motivation is one of the like really important things to know when you have ADHD, because I think that's such a struggle. Is you're just like, I just can't do anything. I want to get these things done and I can't motivate myself to do stuff. And a lot of that is where you build up strategies for dealing with ADHD. So that's what we're going to cover next week is, yeah, music is huge for motivation. But so that's what we're going to cover next week, so that next week will be really useful week, I think, like really covering some of the tools. And we will get into some of that you see like on March 29th, dealing with emotions, rejection, and shame. That's going to be a really fun week, but it's also, I think, really important and really validating to sort of like understand like why we, struggle with things in a certain way and what we can do about it. And we'll have also will have tools for dealing with that stuff too when we cover that. So yeah, that's basically kind of the end of this week. This is sort of the outlook. I'll just read through them. So next week we'll be finding motivation. And then the week after that, we'll be talking about brain differences and procrastination, and then time blindness and memory. And then like I said, dealing with emotions, rejection, and shame. And then the final week will be kind of putting kind of all those strategies together in sort of like your own toolbox, because like there's no one magic strategy that's going to work for everybody. So you kind of have to put together your own list of what strategies to pull from and use for your situation. And then just sort of leaving that week in particular open to Q&A, but we might also do Q&A throughout the time as well. And I realize now I'm like, oh yeah, Trina was supposed to do all this. And I just saw the slide and got excited and talked about it. So
No, it's okay. I
yeah.
think we do have a few minutes here at the end. If anybody did have any questions, I haven't looked at the Maven thing, but if you have any quick questions, if you want to turn your mic off and ask them, we have a few minutes here.